My name is Tim Lee. I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on mineral exploration in the Golden Triangle of British Columbia today. We will hear from Lawrence Ralston, President and CEO of Mountain Boy Minerals Limited. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Mountain Boy webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Mountain Boy corporate presentation. That can be found on the company's website, mountainboyminerals.ca. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Mountain Boy. So we have Mountain Boy presenting today. The company has a portfolio of projects in the Golden Triangle area of British Columbia. This includes silver, gold, and polymetallic projects, as well as a newly emerging copper-gold target located in the midst of large mines and deposits held by majors. With that, I now turn it over to Lawrence to update our audience on the company.
Thanks for the intro, Tim. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the presentation. Before talking about Mountain Boy, I want to make a couple of brief comments about the resource markets. Everybody that knows the resource markets knows that this market is very cyclical. And yet, in spite of that knowledge, the greatest selling pressure comes when the prices are low, and the greatest buying pressure comes when prices are high. People that go counter to that general attitude and buy low, those are the ones that make the fortunes in the resource industry. So I would highly encourage people to use this opportunity when the markets are down, when prices are cheap. And for a company like Mountain Boy that has an active program underway, money in the bank, and a lot of news coming, it's a wonderful buying opportunity. So with that, let's talk about Mountain Boy. The first thing I want to talk about is to just highlight a couple of points about the Golden Triangle. By now, everybody in the resource sector knows about the Golden Triangle, but you may not be right up to date. Newcrest, Australia's largest gold producer, has now invested $4 billion in the Golden Triangle over the past 3 years. Other majors are also heavily involved up there. Newmont has just completed their third acquisition in the Golden Triangle. They're building up quite a position. So it's an area that's really coming alive. Now, why is it that Newcrest has made such a big commitment to this region? To see the answer to that, let's have a look at their biggest gold mining operation, the Cadia Mine Complex, located in Eastern Australia. In the last fiscal year, Cadia produced 765,000 ounces of gold. The all-in sustaining cost was negative $109 an ounce. Typically, the all-in sustaining cost is about $1,000 an ounce, but at Cadia, it was negative. The byproduct copper and silver produced from that operation more than covered the total operating cost. So Cadia generated 765,000 ounces of gold for free. The key to that remarkable profitability is that Cadia is based on an alkalic porphyry. And alkalic porphyries are different than a classic, let's call it, porphyry, in that they contain gold as well as copper. There are only a few places in the world that have the clusters of these alkalic porphyries, and the Golden Triangle of British Columbia is one of those regions. Now, that combination of gold and copper in one deposit is extremely important. At Cadia, the gold grade is 0.36 grams per ton. The copper grade is 0.26 grams or percent copper. Either of those in isolation would be considered very low grades. And yet the two together generated $1.2 billion of free cash flow for Newcrest in the last fiscal year. So it's very important to look at these deposits. A lot of people look at deposits in the Golden Triangle and they say, gee, it's a very low copper grade. And someone else will look at the deposit and say, gee, it's a very low gold grade. But you put those two metals together, you can generate enormous profits. And we see that in the case of Newcrest Cadia mine. So the reason for talking about Newcrest and Cadia is that our flagship project in the Golden Triangle appears to be exactly the same type of deposit as Cadia, an alkalic porphyry. And our mission in life here is to demonstrate that geological model. And if we're successful in generating support for that geological model, demonstrating that this is a deposit like that, then we can follow in the path of companies like GT Gold, which last year was taken over by Newmont for $350 million. So that's our game plan. And we're well on the way to achieving that. So talking about Mountain Boy, as Tim said, and I've alluded to, we are focused on the Golden Triangle, an incredibly rich mineralized area. We've got a team of committed explorers that are intent on making a discovery. We have a very low market cap, and insiders own about 25% of the company. So our interests are exactly aligned with the other shareholders. So if we look at our management team, won't get into all the details, but you can see that there's an extremely powerful team of explorers here, and all the other important bases in running a company are covered by this management team. But look, the really important people in this company are not the ones on this slide. It's the people on this slide. These are the people in the field making it happen. These are the ones out there looking to make that discovery. These people are totally committed. Every day they go to work, they put their lives on the line for the shareholders. They're excited to do that. They believe in what they're doing, and they are hungry for a discovery, and they're putting everything they've got into making that discovery. A few pictures here just to give a visual sense of who we are and what we're doing and the area that we're working in. So this region, the Golden Triangle, has a long mining history. And I have to say, this geological team is the most fearless geological team that I've ever come across in the 40 years that I've been in this industry. As I said, they literally put their lives on the line for the benefit of shareholders. They are looking at rocks that have never been seen before up close because people in the past just haven't taken it on themselves to get into the position where they can look at these rocks up close. They're committed, they're determined for success, and they are, as we say here, reaching for the top. Now, our strategy is to bring new thinking to previous results. There's been a lot of work done in this Golden Triangle region, and we are committed to pulling together all that historic information, looking at it with fresh eyes, looking at it comprehensively, and from that, getting a fresh insight into these systems that have been looked at previously. We have 7 projects. I'm going to focus on one part of one project in this talk, and that is the Telegraph project, which we believe is geologically similar to the Cadia deposit of Newcrest. We're in the right neighborhood. The Red Chris mine of Newcrest is just over here to the east. The Saddle North deposit that was purchased last year by Newmont for $350 million Tech's Shaft Creek deposit is just south of us. Tech and Newmont have a joint venture on Galore Creek, and there's the Big Red deposit just to the north. So we're in definitely an area that has produced a lot of world-class porphyry deposits. We have rocks of the same age, the same type. We've got copper and gold over square kilometers on surface. In other words, we've got exactly the same geological setting as the deposits that surround us and have generated world-class deposits. Now, as I said, the Golden Triangle in general has seen a lot of exploration going back over a period of decades. This is the claim position around our telegraph project at one moment in time, in June of 1991. There were many companies have explored this region, but each one of them in turn was looking at one little piece of this big geological system. It was like they were looking at one piece of a jigsaw puzzle. And they didn't even have the benefit of the picture on the box, because when most of this work was done, there was very little geological understanding in the general nature of the mineralization in the Golden Triangle. So we are now pulling together the pieces. We've consolidated a 250 square kilometer property. We've pulled together literally hundreds of geological reports, each looking at little pieces of it. We're looking at it for the first time as one geological system, and that's giving us insights into this geology that have never been experienced before. So, to give one example, most of the historic work in this area was done on this area called Dock, Maine. They were working on this in the 1970s and through the 80s and the 90s up into the early part of the 2000s. A separately owned claim block down here was looked at by a different company, and there was a property line that ran right through here that divided a 6-kilometer trend into two pieces, and each of the owners of those respective pieces were looking at areas that were well away from the property line. So, to give one example of how this property line situation impacted, in 2012, the company that was working on the Dock, Maine area conducted an IP geophysical survey. They did 5 lines, 3 of them over the historic area. 2 of the lines were much further south, and at that time the property line was about here and here. So rather than drilling this big, intense chargeability anomaly, they chose to focus on the area of the historic work, a fairly subtle chargeability anomaly. They put 2 holes into it, and guess what? The results showed that it is a porphyry and that they were on the periphery of that porphyry deposit. Those holes were drilled in 2014. There was no significant work done on this property since those 2 drill holes, until we consolidated the property early last season and began a more comprehensive program. So the first thing we did when we consolidated the property, we went out in the field last season. We looked at this border zone, and the property line would have been roughly here. So this area, we saw no evidence, and there's certainly no evidence in any kind of geological reports that we've come across that showed there had been any previous sampling in this area. In spite of the fact that there was a big IP anomaly up here, and that combining the airborne magnetic surveys from the 2 properties showed a big anomaly right in this area. So those red and purple crosses represent more than 0.5% copper, up to 17.9% copper on surface in an area in the middle of a 6-kilometer trend that had never been sampled, in spite of the fact that there was a chargeability anomaly and a magnetic anomaly that should have brought attention to it previously. So I want to touch just very briefly on the classic porphyry copper model. I'm sure all of you have seen various versions of this slide. Conceptually, there's halos of alteration around the intrusion that is the source of the mineralization for the porphyry. And the classic way of exploring a porphyry deposit is you vector through the different levels of alteration toward this core zone, and just peripheral to the core of the original intrusion, the porphyry system, is where you find the ore zone. Now, this is a classic porphyry. An alkalic porphyry is a little bit different. There's subtle differences in the alteration geochemistry, but one of the really important differences is that a classic porphyry has a lot of quartz. There's silica flooding. The rocks are harder, they're resistant, they stand out. An alkalic porphyry, alkalic mineralization by definition, is low quartz. There's less quartz flooding. The rocks are not as hard. They're recessive, and therefore they don't stick out. So you need a different exploration approach looking for an alkalic porphyry than you would apply in the hunt for the classic porphyry model. We are applying that different approach for the first time ever to this system, and we are finding some very, very encouraging results. We're very excited about what we're seeing. We're enthusiastic about what we believe we have on the ground here. So just to give a sense of what we might have, if we take the Seabridge KSM deposit, which is located a little further south of us in the Golden Triangle, we look at the K, the S, the M, and now they've got the iron cap, roughly a 6-kilometer trend. That 6-kilometer trend hosts compliant resources that contain 154 million ounces of gold, 55 billion pounds of copper, 820 million ounces of silver, which is why this region is so renowned for massive deposits. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that we think we have a KSM, but it is interesting that our geological footprint is roughly on the same scale as the KSM deposit. So we believe we've got a massive porphyry. We believe it's at the alkalic end of the spectrum. We know there's a lot of gold in this system. Our challenge now is to find ways to vector toward the core of the system. So as I said, the alkalic alteration halos are a little bit different. And in our situation, there's one other difference from many other porphyries in that this system has had multiple phases of intrusion. And each one of those intrusions and the alteration halos that surround it overprints the previous alteration halos, and it becomes less clear than in those neatly colored diagrams that everybody's familiar with. So how do we resolve this challenge of vectoring within a complex system? Well, geologists are already in the field again. They have with them TerraSpec and XRF devices. These are very sophisticated devices. Not very many exploration companies would have them in the field. Typically, you bring a few samples back, you send them to a lab, and a few weeks later, you get results on the TerraSpec, which is used to fine-tune the definitions of the alteration. We are very much committed to leading edge geoscience. We've been working with two of the leading geological research organizations. We've got a team of experts, and they've all been contributing to this program. So geologists in the field, very sophisticated devices with them. They'll have real-time information that will make for a very effective field program. We will be conducting an IP survey soon. We're going to infill and extend the program that was done in 2012. All of the work that's going on now and will be happening over the next few weeks is aimed at drill target definition. So by end of August, we expect to have targets ready for drilling. And that is our intent, is to drill it through from late August through September, October. And as I said at the outset, we are modeling our program on what GT Gold did so successfully and leading to a $350 million takeover by one of the majors. We have other targets on the Telegraph project. I won't spend time now, but 10 kilometers east, another area that we think is another porphyry cluster. This one is particularly intriguing that it also has nickel and cobalt values and also some platinum and palladium. There's something really intriguing there. It's a deep feature, and we're going to be doing more work there over the summer. And there's huge areas of geophysical anomalies here that have never been followed up on the ground or have had very minimal ground follow-up. We've engaged a PhD geologist who's going to get out there and look at these things for the first time as part of a broader program to provide us a comprehensive geological understanding of this huge and intense geological system. And we have 6 other projects in the Golden Triangle, at least 2 of which are going to see drilling over the course of this season. We're working toward joint ventures and spin-outs on some of the other ones. There's going to be a lot of news flow over the coming weeks in this program. So our game plan, focus on Telegraph, focus on that dock trend, drill it, see what we've got, bring some of the other targets on the property up to drill stage, drill on 2 of the other projects, spin-outs, and just to summarize, committed, highly skilled management geological team, experts in the Golden Triangle. We've made a conscious decision. We focus on this area. We know it better than anybody. Telegraph, large scale, porphyry copper gold potential, multiple other targets, and big news flow coming over the next season. These folks out in the field at this moment, working hard for the benefit of the shareholders and reaching for the top, looking for that discovery that's going to make all of us very happy. So with that, I'll turn it back to Tim and anyone else that has any questions. Glad to take whatever questions you want to or look into any more details that you wish.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence, for a very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We do have a couple of questions here. Looking on the financial side, do you have sufficient funds for the ongoing exploration work? How long until you need to raise some additional money?
We have enough working capital now, cash plus freely trading shares of other companies that we can sell to get us through what we call our base case program. We are well advanced in securing a financing. It would be a very strategic financing. We're grinding through some paperwork on that at the moment, and that will provide adequate funding to do a a very comprehensive program this year on telegraph and a little bit of work on the other projects.
Great. And looking at drilling plans, are you planning to start drilling soon, or what are the timeline for plans on that side this year?
The drilling is anticipated to start in late August. We could go out now and drill with the information that we have in hand, but we are committed to giving the best possible shot on those drill holes. So rather than rushing into the drilling program, we've elected to do further field work, and a big part of that will be a lot more IP. In a porphyry context like this, IP is a very effective tool, and we're going to be doing IP. So we've had geophysical experts review all the historic geophysical results and help us design a program. Line cutting for that program is underway as we speak. We expect the actual IP program to start in a couple of weeks to give us the results of that program before we get into drilling.
Great. Kind of broadly looking at projects, obviously given kind of the mountainous nature of the region, are you able to work on the projects year round, or are you limited to kind of certain seasons?
Well, we're definitely limited by seasons. At this stage in the exploration, the exploration work is conducted beginning about now and continuing to the first part of November, typically. With a lot of snow on the ground, it's difficult to work beyond that. One of our projects is the historic Red Cliff mine. It has significant underground development. We haven't done a lot of work on that in the past, but we're reactivating that now. And one of the options that we're considering is getting underground on Red Cliff, and that would give us a project that we could work through the winter on.
Great. And one question here, kind of stepping back and looking at the company as a whole and kind of the strategy side of things. Given your diverse portfolio of projects, would you look to potentially bring in partners and potentially kind of prospect generator on some of the projects, or are you planning to keep 100% and move them forward solo?
We're absolutely determined to bring partners in on various projects. We're well advanced in discussions right now. Either a spin out to a separate public company in which we would retain some of the shares in that company, or a classic joint venture where someone else would over time earn an interest in the project. I'm a big advocate of the prospect generator model. We're not doing it exactly here. We're advancing our projects into the drill stage. But clearly we have more than any one junior can handle. We've had a lot of interest in our projects, but of course in the current market, it's difficult to get commitments and get people to raise money in this kind of a market. But we'll certainly have partners before the end of the season that will see work done on other projects.
Great. And kind of looking kind of further afar, but if you do have a sizable discovery, what would you think would be the long-term strategy? Would you want to evolve into more of a developer and eventually a miner, or would you look to advance a project and then potentially sell to a producer?
The scale of the projects that we're looking at are well beyond what a junior company could take on. Now, having said that, Seabridge, they're still on their project. They've put a lot of money into it. They have a couple $2 billion market value right now. Pretium also advanced the Brucejack deposit into production before they were taken over for a $3 billion price tag. I doubt that we would do that. Not to say that it couldn't happen. A more likely scenario is something like GT Gold last season, which was bought by Newmont for $350 million. That would be a more likely scenario for us. But if, for example, we find what we're expecting to find on the Telegraph project, then Telegraph would be separated from the other projects and spun out or sold off separately, allowing us to continue to add value to the other projects.
Great. And to review, what news would we expect to have potentially over the coming weeks and months from Mountain Boy?
Well, first off, we will be announcing next week that the guys are in the field, they're working, the IP is about to start. And, along with that, we'll go a summary of the project and the potential of the Telegraph project. So that's one bit of news. The financing that we're working toward, I think, will generate a lot of interest. And at the corporate level, joint ventures and or spin-outs on the other projects will generate news. So, for example, if we were to spin one of our projects out into a separate public company, we would likely distribute the shares of that company to the shareholders of Mountain Boy effectively as a dividend. Other companies have used that approach very effectively, and that's one of the options that we're considering at the moment.
Great.
And of course, as the program evolves, we're doing a lot of sampling, and we're not going to announce XRF results as if they're assays, but we will have samples and assays and newsworthy events that will be happening over the coming weeks.
Great. And then kind of generally, one other industry trend lately has been availability of people and drills and drillers. Do you have a drilling company you work with and kind of reliable availability for when you start drilling?
We do. Look, our VP Exploration, Lucia Tenney, is a masterful organizer as well as being a great geologist. And we've got great relationships that we've built over the last 3 years that we've worked together as a team here in the Golden Triangle. We have a driller lined up. We have drill pad builders lined up. We have a helicopter that we're using now, and we'll have another one lined up completely at our discretion as we get toward the drilling stage. So yes, all the logistics are in place. And on the geological team, look, these people are excited to be working with us, and they come back year after year. We've had several of them working with us right through the winter on processing all the information that has been generated historically. So we've got a great team of geologists. We've got all the logistical aspects are covered off.
Great. All right. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions for today. I would like to thank Lawrence Ralston for presenting today, and thank you everyone out there for tuning in. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back Monday afternoon when our webinar series continues with Altalay Mining presenting Monday, June 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.